Rest in peace, one of the greatest players in the history of baseball.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by good friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. New customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. For those of you who are watching the video, you can see behind me right now is the Oakland Coliseum. This is as close as you can get to the Coliseum, and the A's no longer play there, and it's a very sad image to be here. The empty parking lot where the new A's stadium should be built is there. The last game, I went to the last game in September, and the first pitch was thrown out. Dave Stewart and Rickey Henderson threw the first pitches. And of course, we got the news the other day that, and it's just surreal to say this out loud, that Rickey Henderson died. He was 65 years old. Just a few days before his birthday. He's born on December 25th. Rickey Henderson, it's difficult to describe his impact on the A's. He is the greatest player ever to play for the A's franchise, whether they're in Philadelphia, Kansas City, Sacramento, or in the outside chance they ever play in Las Vegas. Not one member of the Philadelphia A's could touch him. No one in Oakland. He's one of the greatest offensive players of all time, and he just was ubiquitous in my life as a baseball fan. Let me put it this way. I talk a lot on this show about the rule of 7, that you really start following sports out of your first concrete sports memories when you're 7 years old. Rickey Henderson's rookie year was 1979, the year I was 7 years old. I was a 7-year-old child just learning how to read the backs of baseball cards. And his final game was played after I had proposed to my wife. Needless to say, I didn't know my wife when I was 7 years old. And if I did, I probably wasn't going to propose to her then. He stretched so many eras. Charlie Finley owned the A's when he made his debut. And when he finished, we were already midway through the Moneyball years. And his impact was just, he changed the game. He was the most fun player. And he always looked incredibly healthy. I saw him at the shopping mall in Palo Alto a couple of Christmases ago. And he looked like he could put on a uniform and play. He always took great care of his health. I remember reading articles about him, like during spring training, when his teammates Canseco and McGuire were shooting God knows what into their body. He would be going to farmers markets and trying to get fresh fruit and fresh vegetables from the farm to his table because he took care of himself. It's one of the reasons he played for so long. And he just looked like someone who was going to live forever. And I got word the other day, or a rumor started floating around online, that Rickey Henderson had died. And we all know to take rumors on the internet with a grain of salt. I mean, remember, on the same day that Michael Jackson and Farrah Fawcett died, there was this rumor going around that Jeff Goldblum had died as well. In fact, it was reported in some news outlets. And, you know, the internet can throw bad information around. And I felt like I shouldn't say anything until we find out. Well, we found out. And with that, baseball is a little less fun now. One of the most fun players in the history of baseball is no longer there. Someone with so many great stories. Do you know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. I feel like I'm repeating myself. And I feel like standing outside of the Oakland Coliseum, while as strong a tribute as it could possibly be, to try to come to the spot where Rickey Henderson had his greatest moments, had his greatest highlights, where he broke the all-time stolen base record, the team where he won his first World Series title with, the team that most people associate him with. And while he was born in Chicago, he grew up in Oakland. And he knew Dave Stewart growing up, and the two of them joined together to win a World Series title here. They actually joined together to win another World Series title in Toronto. But I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself, and I'd rather do that inside the Oakland Coliseum. So let me tell you what I'm going to do when we come back from this break. Last year, I posted a video on December 25th, which is Rickey Henderson's birthday. And I broke down in that video the elements of his play, the elements of his stats, and his impact as a borderline folk hero. And I did that during an A's game in 2023. If you will permit me, when we come back from our break, I want to replay part of that show, because I felt like I said it about as well as I could last year, and I'd rather do it inside a ballpark, because at the time that I recorded it, the field itself was called Rickey Henderson Field. When we come back, I'm going to take you back to last year and review some of the things that I said about a player who, let's face it, was one of the greatest who ever played.
Hey, did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That happened to me. And I had a few subscriptions for some streaming video services. That's all I'll say. And I didn't even realize I was paying for them. Rocket Money made it so easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for our finances. And sometimes you'll get a message like, hey, there was a big purchase you made. And I say, yeah, I did it. I made that purchase. But Rocket Money is essentially saying, we're just making sure. And do you know what? I'd rather have that than pick up my bank statement and go like, where the heck did all my money go? It went to all those services. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this summer. Rocket Money has 5 million users and has saved over a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the minimum features. You know, I looked up, I saw, hey, there's a couple services there I don't use anymore. Rocket Money, boom, gets it all done. I use it to cancel services I don't use anymore. I've saved a ton. With our goals features, I've been able to automatically set aside money for the future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Check out Rocket Money.
I'm sure you'd acknowledge the fact that Rickey Henderson is a great player. He's a Hall of Famer. His number is retired. Where is it? Somewhere right over there. His number's retired here in Oakland. He's a phenomenal player and one of the most exciting players of his era. An MVP, World Series champion, All-Star, set lots of records. Are you really aware of how great he was? Do you understand that there are certain metrics you can use and not super complicated sabermetrics that will take a Caltech degree to understand, but simple meat and potatoes ways that you can look at Rickey Henderson and realize he's one of the best players in terms of offense in the history of baseball. Now look, we all know the fact that he's the stolen base king. We also know that he has 3,000 hits. We also know that he has stolen 100 bases 3 times. No other American League player in history has done it once. He has 1,400 stolen bases. He passed Lou Brock, who didn't have 1,000 in his career when he set the record. And he has been, he led the league in runs 5 times, and he is, at one point, was the all-time champion of stolen bases in the history of the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees, a franchise with, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, some decent players in their history. For a period of time, no Yankee stole more bases than Rickey Henderson in their career. And Rickey was only there 4.5 years. I don't think you completely understand the ramifications of Rickey Henderson's stolen base records, okay? I mentioned the fact Lou Brock was the greatest stolen baseman before Rickey. Lou Brock had 900 some odd stolen bases. Rickey has 1,406. Now think about that for a second. In terms of leaders of stolen bases, what, 40, 50 do the trick right now? Let's say you steal 70 bases, and you do that every single year for 20 years. Rickey Henderson would still have the stolen base championship. And Rickey Henderson led the league, the American League, in stolen bases in 1980. He also led the American League in stolen bases in 1998. That's an 18-year gap between the first time he led the league in stolen bases and the last time he led the league in stolen bases. Now, if you take every single American League leader in stolen bases since Rickey Henderson's last time, from 1999 to present, and you added up all of their totals of all the leaders of stolen bases in the American League since 1998, all their totals, they would still be 236 stolen bases shy of Rickey Henderson's final tally. That's someone who has completely redefined a position as the leadoff hitter and created a probably unbreakable record. But he's more than just a stolen base guy. I think a metric, an incredibly underappreciated metric of offensive excellence, is times on base. That's pretty easy to understand. You're a batter. How many times do you get on base? By hit, by walk, by getting hit by pitch, whatever it is. Not errors, but all the times you did something positive to get on base. That's kind of the name of the game, right? If you're a batter, get on base. And how many times did Rickey Henderson get on base in his career? In his 25-year career, he got on base 5,343 times. 5,343 times in his career. Do you know who's done it more? Only 3 people in the history of baseball got on base more often than Rickey Henderson. And they're good names, too. Do you think I'm going to say Hank Aaron? Nope. Not as many as Rickey Henderson. Think I'm going to say Willie Mays? Nope. Not as many as Rickey Henderson. Think I'm going to say Ted Williams? Nope. Not as many as Rickey Henderson. You think I'm going to say Babe Ruth? Nope. Not as many times as Rickey Henderson. 3 players have got on base more than Rickey Henderson. Ty Cobb, Barry Bonds, Pete Rose. And that's it. And I think it's safe to say Rickey, of those 3 players, is the one with the least amount of baggage. We're talking about a player where the only 3 in the history of baseball who have done the basic element of a batter better than Rickey Henderson or Rose Cobb and Bonds. That is not just good company to be in. That's 4, right? Don't people say Mount Rushmore as some sort of metric of, oh, who's your Mount Rushmore of this, Mount Rushmore of that? If there's a Mount Rushmore of getting on base, Rickey's on it. But beyond the numbers, Rickey played the game with an unbelievable flair. He changed the game when he was on base. When he was on base, people couldn't keep their eyes off of him. Was he going to steal? Was he not? Suddenly, the players like Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield got big, fat pitches to hit because the pitchers were concentrating more on Rickey at first base. He had power. He could hit the ball out of the ballpark, just as the Toronto Blue Jays. He also bounced around. We all know that. But twice when teams acquired him in mid-season, that team went on to win the World Series championship. The 89 A's trade for him when he was with the Yankees. He showed up in 1989 in his great return, hit key home runs against the Blue Jays and against the Giants in the World Series, and he got his World Series ring. He was the one who started the rally that was capped off by Joe Carter's home run when the Blue Jays won the World Series in 1993. It was Rickey Henderson who scored on the walk-off bunt by Carlos Guillen when the Mariners won the division series in 2000 against the Chicago White Sox. He's always been in the middle of things. Yes, Met fans, I know he was playing cards, but forgive him of that. We also know that he was a funny interview, had a way with words. We know that Rickey being Rickey was fun. He played with a flair, with dramatic. And one of the great frustrations in baseball history was the fact that Rickey Henderson was hurt at the beginning of the 1985 season with the Yankees. And by the time he came back, Yogi Berra was fired as manager, and he had a reunion with Billy Martin, who was his manager with the A's. We had a chance to have Yogi Berra and Rickey Henderson in the same dugout giving quotes to the New York press of the 1980s. Oh, what could have been. I, for one, thought the "I am the greatest of all time" speech when he won the stolen base championship, I think was, I thought it was hilarious. Rickey is an amazing player, one of the great offensive players in the history of baseball. And I have to say something. We are in danger of losing a legacy if the A's move from Oakland. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Let me tell you something. This is a time when everyone gets into it, and I love to pick up a W, and, I bet on these games as they're going on. And guess what, folks? You do it so easily on FanDuel. It's all on one page. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, let's hear more about what I said about Rickey back in 2023. If the A's move from Oakland, who will claim Rickey's legacy? We may never have experienced something like this in baseball history. Let me explain. Teams have moved before, and sometimes when a team moves, the legacy of the great players who were part of the team kind of stay in the original city. Am I right? And sometimes if a team moves, the memories of the players of the old team become hazy. Yankee fans can still recite the great achievements of Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Joe DiMaggio. But what New York fan remembers Christy Mathewson or Mel Ott, Bill Terry, or John McGraw, who were all huge figures for the New York Giants? Sure, the San Francisco Giants have them mentioned on their Wall of Fame, but San Francisco fans don't take those players to heart, just like the Philadelphia A's championships that are listed here. Oakland fans don't brag about 1910 and the great players from those Philadelphia teams, Lefty Grove, Jimmy Fox, Connie Mack, who the manager is one of the great figures in baseball history, is all but forgotten except by baseball historians in Philadelphia. And so sometimes you see a player return back to the city if a new team is installed. The Braves played in Milwaukee, and Hank Aaron was the great star of the Braves championship teams. The Braves moved to Atlanta. Eventually, Hank Aaron finished his career with the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's honored in both Atlanta and in Milwaukee. Same thing with Willie Mays, part of the New York Giants. His numbers retired with San Francisco with the Giants, and in New York with the Mets, where he finished his career. Incidentally, here at the Oakland Coliseum. Now, if the A's move, where will Rickey's legacy be? There won't be a team here. There's not going to be a team here. They won't install a new team in Oakland, and they're not going to put a statue for him in San Francisco, especially not since he was part of the '89 A's who helped beat the Giants. There are sometimes players who kind of fade away into our memory, and if a team fades away, that becomes really sad. The Expos had some wonderful players on their team, and some of the Hall of Famers from the Expos have been honored by other clubs, like the Mets have embraced Gary Carter, and the Cubs have embraced another Hall of Famer in Andre Dawson. But where is Tim Raines' legacy? But it goes even further than that. Yes, the Expos have moved, and the chances of them getting a new team are, I don't know, I'd say 50-50. But at Montreal Canadiens games, they have in the rafters the retired numbers for the Expos. There's still sports being played in Montreal. When the A's move here, this stadium's going to be leveled. The Raiders are gone. The Warriors moved across the bay. There won't be an Oakland team. There won't be an Oakland legacy. And Rickey Henderson may very well be a player who, believe it or not, in a generation or two will fade away, especially without a fan base to keep his memory alive. His memory's kept alive here every day with the mascot race, and the fact that his number is retired, he's honored and remembered. This is called freaking Rickey Henderson Field. But if they move to Las Vegas, sure, they'll have his number up there. But what connection is he going to have to Vegas? The same connection that Christy Mathewson has to San Francisco. The same connection that Warren Spahn has to Atlanta, which is nothing. And for the teams that fade away into oblivion, like the St. Louis Browns, who became the Baltimore Orioles, there are great players in Cardinal history from the 1920s who are still brought up, whose numbers like Rogers Hornsby, and like in the 30s like Dizzy Dean, and in the 40s like Stan Musial are still on the walls at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. But who brings up George Sisler and some of the other great figures of the St. Louis Browns? And Sisler was not the player that Rickey Henderson was. He's not one of the 4 or 5 greatest offensive players in the history of baseball. What I'm saying is, let's celebrate Rickey Henderson, and let's make sure his legacy doesn't go away. He's the greatest athletic in history, Philadelphia, Kansas City, or Oakland. And he's one of the greatest offensive players of all time. And to have that, who's also someone who is an exciting player, who changed the game, who's one of the most dynamic figures I've ever seen in person. We cannot let that player and that legacy fade away. And if you don't believe me, Connie Mack used to be one of the biggest figures in baseball. There was a league of youth baseball called the Connie Mack League. Christy Mathewson was the first huge superstar in New York baseball. You go up to any fan in Philadelphia or New York, and chances are they don't know who they are. Well, that's about all I can say. We've lost some unbelievably huge figures, not just in terms of greatness, but in terms of how they're beloved by fan bases. You know it's been a rough year for losing Bay Area baseball legends, when Orlando Cepeda, a Hall of Famer, is only the third most beloved figure lost from Bay Area sports. And consider some of the other figures. Whatever you think of Pete Rose, he was a giant in baseball history. And if you're going to do a list of the 5 most productive offensive players of all time, won't you have to include Pete Rose, Willie Mays, and Rickey Henderson in that conversation? Not to mention Fernando Valenzuela and Luis Tiant and Whitey Herzog. This year is ending pretty rough. And this caught us all by surprise. It caught us all by surprise that we assumed it was an internet rumor. We assumed it was a hoax. I can tell you why I assumed it was a hoax. I assumed it was a hoax because, well, frankly, it never occurred to me we could lose Rickey Henderson. But we did. And there'll never be another one like him. Rest in peace, Rickey. Rickey gone. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now. And you can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the great Rickey Henderson and bidding him farewell. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.